Welcome to the Golfish Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Goodman. Every week on the show, we're going to bring you fascinating interviews with the people behind the players of the PGA, LPGA, Champions Tour, and beyond. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the action. This week, I'm joined by veteran tour caddy Bill Harke. From playing golf in college to working in a golf store to caddying at Pebble Beach, he's been around the block and knows all sides of the game. Bill has caddied since 2003 when he got his first shot on the LPGA Tour and has since been on the bag for Jonas Blixt, Kirk, Tom Gillis, and he starts the 2019-2020 season with longtime friend Matt Every. He gives us the inside scoop on how players and caddies connect, what walking the course means to him now, and interesting thoughts on pay discrimination between the PGA and LPGA Tours. If you're interested in learning more about what it takes to not only be a tour caddy, but to succeed at it, then this episode's for you. Let's get started.
Hey, Amy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Enjoying a nice day in California.
Awesome. That sounds like a great problem to have.
Yeah.
What part of California are you in?
Too much?
No, not at all.
Northern California, just on the coast south of San Francisco, a little town called Half Moon Bay.
Okay, so a little bit cooler up there, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I mean, it's been warm lately, which is isn't the normal thing for here. It's mostly global warming effects, I think.
Yeah.
But it's mid-70s, and usually in the summertime we're fogged over, and it's pretty nasty. But it's like been mid-70s for a couple weeks now.
Oh, that's awesome. You got to love that.
Yeah, I can't complain. I usually brag about how I get to go home in the summertime, like on tour, we're just chasing the sun around and working in the 100-degree weather. And then I get to go home to the fog, but this year wasn't that.
This year you didn't have that.
No.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the Golfish Podcast. I'm super excited to talk to you. I've heard a lot of great things, so wanted to introduce you to our audience. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how we got here, how you got here today?
Yeah, I don't know. It all kind of, there was never a plan to how I ended up caddying on tour. I just always been in golf. My grandfather introduced me to the game when I was about 10, and I loved it. My brother and I both went golfing with him one day, and my brother never wanted to do it again, and I wanted to do it every day. So I've only had one job in my life that wasn't golf related. I've worked as a caddy at a club. I was a teaching professional at a club for a while. I worked at a golf store, and then kind of just took a chance. And I knew a woman playing on the ladies tour back in, I think it was 2003. And at the time I was teaching at a club in Monterey, and just was looking for a change. So I, went out and caddied for her for a year. In fact, the first tournament that I worked for was in Hawaii, and she let me know that her and her husband, they got pregnant like 3 weeks before that, so she was only going to play for about 6 months. And so I was like, oh my God, what did I do?
Right.
Like I left a job,
I left a job for this. What do I do now?
Yeah, it worked out. I was, I guess I was pretty good at it, and, she helped me find another job for when she was out. And then after she, took her maternity leave, I went back and worked for her for a little bit, and I realized that I really do like it. And I think it takes a certain type of person to really, not just to be good at a tour caddy, but to enjoy the lifestyle. It's not like anything else that you'll do, So I just took the next step and tried to find somebody playing on the PGA Tour, and doing that, I found a guy named Peter Tomasulo who was playing on the Web Tour at the time. It was a nationwide tour at the time. It's now the Corn Ferry Tour. But yeah, I went and worked for him, and then he graduated into the PGA Tour the next year, and that was 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I definitely feel blessed with that. I know a lot of guys have spent a lot of years working on that tour, and it's still fun, but you're not putting money away working on that tour. You gotta, in order to make money, you have to have a great season. Where on the PGA Tour, you can have average seasons and still be comfortable, So,
yeah. So
it all happened quick. It was just kind of, I look back at it now. I started doing this when I was in my 20s and I'm in my early 40s now, and like it all happened quick, but I've enjoyed pretty much every minute of it. There's been some down times, but I think as with anything in life.
That's awesome. So I'd love to dive into what you said a little bit more about like the differences between obviously now Korn Ferry and PGA and LPGA. What are the biggest differences? Obviously money is one of them, but what do you see as a caddy?
It's the web tour, the Korn Ferry tour, so I'll probably say that a few times. Yeah. It took me a long time
it's hard to break
web
that.
Instead of nationwide.
Yeah.
But it just, a lot of the players on that tour they're kind of on edge, as they should be. You're trying to, nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to play 5 years in a row on the Korn Ferry tour. No offense to the tour, but that's what it's there for. It's there to be a stepping stone to the PGA Tour, and
absolutely.
And then it kind of, that attitude for the players kind of carries over to their first couple years on the PGA Tour, because now you got to prove yourself that you belong there. You made it there, but just because you made it there doesn't mean you belong there, as a player and as a caddy, to be honest. But then when you start working for players that are, that have played 4, 5, 6 years on tour and they're comfortable, it's definitely, it's more laid back, to be honest. The guys are comfortable with their talent and their ability, and they're just trying to make the best of it when they can. And the money's so darn good now, thanks Tiger, but it's like you can make a very, very comfortable living as a player just keeping your card every year, and you can make a comfortable living as a caddy just working for somebody who keeps their card every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the biggest difference I see, and I tell people this all the time when they ask, the biggest difference between the working the LPGA Tour and the PGA Tour is the LPGA Tour it was fun. Like, there was a lot of camaraderie, players and caddies all stayed in the same hotel. We all went out to dinner together, traveled together, just because the money wasn't as good. So, it's just like there wasn't as much of the, like, I don't know what the right word is, and that's not animosity, but there wasn't like, oh, these guys are great at it, or these girls are great at it, and you're in this category, they're in that category, where, it's except that for the top 20 players on the LPGA, everybody basically made about the same amount of money. It just kind of worked out that way, it seemed, at least. Obviously there are differences in what they make, but it was fun. Like, we traveled, it was, and you traveled around the world too on that tour back in that time. They still do now, but you did a lot of international stuff, and it was a good time, and you had a lot of friends, and I still have a ton of friends from that tour that I stay in touch with, and I follow the tour just to see how they're doing. And but the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour, it's much more of a, you still have friends, don't get me wrong, but it's so like hyper competitive that there isn't the camaraderie. You're not hanging out with other players. You got a couple caddy buddies that you stay with here and there and have dinner with. But yeah, it was definitely, I always say this, it was fun on the ladies tour, but it also could have been my perspective on the whole thing, being new to it and thinking it was great. And, I was,
you're like, I'm where I want to be.
Yeah, a couple months before that, I was folding sweaters in a golf shop at a golf course, so it was a big change for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, but even still, like, I have lifelong friendships with some of those players out there, and some of the guys that were caddying out there. That they don't dissolve with time. Like some work friendships go. It's just it was a little different vibe, if you will, out there than it is on the PGA Tour. Now, don't get me wrong, I hope I spend the rest of my career on the PGA Tour. Just, unfortunately, the way that the world is, the money's better there, and it's, that's I guess that's the ultimate goal in life, to make as much money, or whatever amount of money it takes to make you happy, but it was, it's just a different life, it's
for
like
sure.
The golf, not to say the golf is secondary by any means, but on the ladies tour, it was more of a experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dive into that a little bit more. One of the things you mentioned is just like the stress and how on edge people may be on, and I would assume it would be like that on Symetra too, and Korn Ferry alike. Did you watch the Korn Ferry Tour Championship this weekend?
I didn't watch the championship this weekend. I did watch the final event in Portland.
Okay.
Of the regular season, which is I was watching it with my grandfather and my father, and like my grandfather has played golf his whole life. He's 92 now, and he still tries to play as much as he can. Like my father never played, but he started following it when I started playing. I played in high school, college, and stuff, and then when I started caddying, he really got into it. And I was telling them that like this is the best tournament of the year to watch on any tour because there's so much going on. As far as
so much on the line.
Finishing the 25 to get a PGA Tour card, or finishing the top 75 to get a chance to get your PGA Tour card in the next, in the finals thing, and then guys hanging on just to have full status out there next year. It was exciting to watch. I hate to say it, but I really don't watch that much golf anymore just because I don't want to be so immersed in it and
you don't want to spend all your off time there.
Yeah. So it's I really enjoyed watching that, and a couple friends, players and caddies that that were lucky enough to succeed in that event and move on to the next level was really cool to watch.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean, just the pressure
and it's not
on
a money
them at the
thing
end
out there either.
No, not at that point.
It's not a money thing. It's they're playing for their livelihood. And the chance to prove themselves on the biggest stage. I mean, there's nowhere else to play except for the PGA Tour. That's the best place you can play. So
I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I think the last handful of events when people started getting their cards on Corn Ferry and like showing their pictures and showing their celebrations with their families and everything. I mean, you can just feel how exciting that is to them. And some of these guys had like the round of their life. I mean,
well, Scott Harrington is one of them. Oddly enough, I caddied for him one event on the at the time the Nationwide Tour in 2007, and became pretty good friends, and we're kind of chummy for the rest of that year. And then I was lucky enough to graduate, and I still kind of followed Scott because I liked him a lot. But you think, I mean, that was 12 years ago now, and this is his first crack out on the PGA Tour, and it's just like I was emotional about it. I didn't cry or anything, but it like kind of, I was so excited for him. I sent him a nice message, and like his whole story with what his wife's going through and everything. It's one of those things that just seems like it was meant to be.
Absolutely.
It had to happen. So
their excitement,
really fun to watch
absolutely. Their excitement when he got that and their hug on 18. I mean, it was just, you felt like you were there. I hope 100%. That they didn't feel like we were there and intruding because the cameras were there, but you could just feel all of it. And it was so exciting for them and seeing, all that time. I mean, just like you said, like 12 years ago, that's a long time to be playing down there.
Yeah. It's hard to stay out there for that long, and still like have the dream alive. Like this is my year. I can do it. It's more, I hope he has a great year and great rest of his career out on the PGA Tour because the amount of determination that he used to get out, to finally get out here is just incredible, and I hope that it just skyrockets his career, and he's a 38 or 39-year-old rookie, whatever he might be a little younger than that, but he's a rookie at his late 30s, and it's incredible.
Do you follow him on Instagram by any chance?
I don't. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter.
Good for you.
Don't have Skype.
Good for you. I love it. Yeah. Well, I'll have to send you one of his pictures that he posted. But it was, so I am not huge on social media outside of Instagram, but there was this like face aging app that you could do. And so he like did the age progression on his face, and he posted about being the oldest PGA Tour rookie, and he looks like he's about like in his 70s in this picture. But it's just so funny because you're like, man, it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, you got your card, you're winning in life right now. Like, go enjoy that. Go enjoy that with your wife. Like, it's just so cool.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, and he proved it to himself. That's what the one thing about golf compared to a lot of other sports is, like, it's you. Like, you don't have teammates that are going to bail you out. You don't have, you're not playing against anybody else directly. It's you, and you're doing it all on your own. And you're like, you're going to feel the fulfillment of success and you're going to feel the devastation of failure, like all on your own. There's nothing else to blame it on except for caddies, of course, but that's part of the job, you know.
Y'all are the worst. That's awesome.
It's just great.
So, quick question. This is super random, but just because I don't know what they are made out of, those cards that they're getting, are they copper?
When I was down there, when I worked for Peter Tomasulo and he graduated, it was like legitimate, like the plastic PGA Tour credential, you know.
Oh, okay,
but I didn't watch, like we turned it off once the golf was over. We were at my grandfather's house. We turned it off, so I didn't see what they actually gave them. But I would hope it's something more than just a plastic card like they used to, you know.
It looks pretty fancy.
And I know there was a coin at one point that they were giving out to everybody. Okay. This was maybe 7-8 years ago, but it should be something that they can hang on to the rest of their life. You know, I have my first credential from the PGA Tour. I couldn't even tell you where it is, but you know,
but it's out
like,
there.
Yeah, it's somewhere in this house. But it's not like, it would be nice if it was something a little bit more of a keepsake, something that can, you know, that you can hand to your kids or whoever it may be that you want to give it to, you know, and they can keep it for their lifetime, and you know, it'll stand the test of time. Yeah,
for sure. So, just from doing a little bit of reading up on you, it sounds like I understand you went to Cal State Monterey.
I did.
Is that right? So, how did you? And you played golf there.
Yeah.
How did you decide to go into caddying versus trying to go pro, or did you try to go pro, and like how'd that all work?
I kind of realized in college, you know, playing against some guys that, you know, it stinks to say, but like I didn't have the drive that a lot of the guys that were better than I was good. You know, I started on the team for 4 years. I played number one for 3 years, but you know, whether it's a motivation thing internally or whatever it was, like I didn't have I had other stuff in my life that I like to do. You know, I didn't have the drive to go as hard as some of the guys I was playing against that were better than me. And I kind of realized it, I think it was probably about my junior year. You know, I wanted to continue to compete, you know, and I was a teaching professional for a while, and I played section events, and that was fun. You know, I make a little bit of money here and there, and I like the competition of it, but like it's a lot of dedication you got to put into it to try to get to the level that these guys play at, that I'm lucky enough to carry the bag around for, you know. So I, while I was in college in the summertime, I would caddy at Pebble Beach, and I loved it, you know. And even when I graduated, I just went to caddying at Pebble just because it was, I mean, you're making good money. You're making more money than I was going to make, you know, getting a start or a low end job at doing something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
I loved it. And you know, even looking back on it now, like I loved helping people enjoy their time out there. You know, it's the prettiest place in the world to wander around, you know, and if I could help them, you know, shoot 100 or shoot 90, whatever it is that their goal is, like that felt good. You know, I really enjoyed it. And I'll make a long story short, but we have when I won with Chris Kirk, we won at Sea Island, Georgia in 2013. And the Paulsons, the guys that do the PGA Tour radio show on Sirius XM or whatever it is, they interview the winning caddies. And so I was doing this interview, and randomly they got a caller that called in, and it was a guy that I caddied for, him and his son at Pebble Beach in 2001. And he called in, and he recognized my name, and then he recognized my voice. He was listening to the show and called in, and just, you know, he said, I don't know, I doubt you remember me, but my son and I came out there and you caddied for us for 2 days, and it's still like the best 2 days of our lives, you know. And it's just to hear something like that,
huge.
You know, it's
really
that's
so
cool.
Wonderful.
Like, yeah. So I always just kind of, I enjoyed caddying. I really like being outside and on the golf course, and, you know, but after a couple years of that, I was like, well, I got to make the next step. And I've always really enjoyed the golf swing and the studying the golf swing and everything. So I got an opportunity through a friend of mine who was the head pro at a club in Monterey called the Preserve Golf Club. I got an opportunity to come up there and work in the golf shop. So I went up there and I put 3 years in, and it was fun. I loved it. It was a great golf course, a great group of members, but something was kind of missing, you know. It just wasn't like it wasn't everything I wanted. And you're in that situation. You're like, well, 25 years from now, I'm going to be doing the same thing, maybe at a different course, maybe a head pro, whatever it may be. And there's something kind of lacking in the excitement, and so yeah, I kind of took a chance. I knew a couple guys that I caddied with at Pebble Beach that ended up caddying on the ladies tour, and they would always come the week of Augusta. The ladies tour doesn't play, and they play in LA the week before, so they would always come up to Monterey for the week and hang out with me. And I got to know players, and then some caddies, and then players started coming too, and it turned into like this 20, 25 people that would come up for the week, and we would watch the Masters, play golf, and, have a good time.
Oh, that sounds great.
And Janice Moody, who was the first woman I worked for out there, I got to know her through that little group of people. And her caddy called me and said, "Hey, Janice just fired me. I know you want to get out here and call her." So I called her, and she was like, "Yeah, meet me in Hawaii." So
wow.
I took a vacation from the preserve, and then realized after the first week that this is what I was going to do for now. So
unreal.
Yeah,
so a couple things. Yeah, for sure. So a couple of things with that. I'd love to go. I'd love to ask you this question about Caddy Confidential that Golf Digest did, because you were listed as one of the caddies to watch at Pebble Beach this year. Does that put a different level of pressure on you?
No, not at all. Like I expect to do, like, I've had some good events at Pebble. Jonas Blixt and I finished third there one year, and like the opportunity to win there would have been huge for me, and like we had a crack at winning, if we birdied 17 and 18, we would have gotten into a playoff with Vaughn Taylor. But no, it doesn't really put pressure on me. I love the place, and I know the golf course well, and it's home for me. I don't, honestly, it sounds silly to say, but I don't care if it's a U.S. Open or the AT&T or, a random Tuesday at Pebble Beach. Like, I'm going to put the same effort in and give the same knowledge that I have. Like, I feel comfortable there. Like, I never, even when Jonas and I were, contending and had a chance to win, like, I was never really, I've been nervous plenty of other times, but something about that place, it's home for me, so I felt at ease, like, kind of in the moment. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, I saw that a friend of mine sent me that article, and like, I thought it was great. I think it was really cool. I don't think it didn't really add any pressure. I don't think, and that's the thing about caddying. Like, the pressure's not on us. Like, we can only do our job. Like, we got to be the rock in the duo. We can't show emotion one way or the other. Happiness or sadness. So yeah, I liked it. I like, I don't I never felt pressure from it. Yeah, it's just, I don't know if that's just through caddying or just my mentality in general, but yeah, I enjoyed it. It was neat to see somebody I don't know who said it, but it was neat to see,
Yeah, absolutely. So you've caddied for quite a few people between LPGA, Web.com or now Corn Ferry, and then PGA, and you're with Jonas now, correct?
No, I'm actually I'm starting this next season with Matt Every, who was a really good friend of mine. I've known him for 10 years. I've never actually caddied for him. His old caddy was a good friend of mine. So yeah, I left Jonas in, I guess it was the summer of 17, and then went back to Chris Kirk, who I had worked for. I worked for Chris Kirk before him. And then I kind of bounced around last year, worked for a bunch of different guys. Yeah. But then Matt and I talked in the off season, and we're gonna give it a go. We've been good friends for a long time, and I've only worked for him one tournament in 10 years or 11 years, whatever it's been. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a good partnership.
That's awesome.
It's nice when you're already friends to start.
Absolutely.
It makes the whole, the first couple of weeks, instead of doing the standard 20 questions about trying to get to know somebody, you already know the guy. So.
Absolutely.
Go to work.
So how does that work? Janice Moody's caddy is like, I just got fired, give her a call. Is that how everyone finds kind of like their niche? Are players calling caddies and trying to get them from other people, or how do you go between people, and how do you know who to talk to about caddying? Yeah,
it's a strange, for such a high level sport, and it's a kind of a strange way it works. It's all just word of mouth and handshakes, and you get to know players, and like
Yeah.
I've cold called plenty of players over the years saying like, hey, I know you don't have anybody right now. I'd love an opportunity. And, half the time that works, half the time they never call you back, but it's just kind of, there's no right way or wrong way to do it. I guess there's probably plenty of wrong ways to do it, but there's no right way to do it. It's all like, it's really kind of old school, there's no contracts. There's nothing like you can get fired in any day. You can quit any day. It's kind of, yeah, a little wild, wild west, if you will, but, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on is like people, trying to get the bag that you're on, or people suggesting you to another player, even though you're working for somebody already. And it's kind of, I equate it to like high school dating at times. Like, you're like, oh, Sally likes me, but I'm dating Jennifer. And,
Right. Oh my gosh.
It's just kind of funny. You try not to let anybody know that you're talking to the other player. And
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah.
So what is that like when you switch players? I mean, and you mentioned before with like Matt, you won't have to play 20 questions, but how hard is it to go onto someone's bag for a week and figure out like what they're doing, what they're wanting, and how do you perform best and support them the best?
I think it kind of, you get to know the guy's golf game pretty quick. At least I feel like I do. I think it's just because I've been immersed in golf my entire life, and it's, the hardest part, honestly, is just getting to know their personality and how they want the information delivered, and, how you're supposed to react when they do this, or how they react when you say this, and it comes like, it's been easy with a lot of guys. It's been hard with a couple of guys that I've worked for, it's just, I think more than anything, it's just personalities. If they, they clash sometimes, I got a reputation for being pretty laid back, and, I think that's just who I am. It's nothing I'm trying to do, and, that sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. And most people love it. They want a caddy who's going to have the same expression on his face when he makes double bogey as opposed to when he makes eagle. Like, you don't want to look over and see that your caddy's disappointed in you, so I treat every shot the same, to be honest. Like, I try to, at least. I know internally a lot, like I've been lucky enough to win a few times, and internally I'm nervous and, shaking on the inside, but I just try not to show it, and you just try to be the rock for the player. And, but yeah, it's as far as the golf goes, getting to know a player, it kind of comes easy, I think, to me, at least. You're not going to be on the second hole of the first tournament you ever work for the guy and be like, it's a 7-iron, like at that point, you kind of talk about numbers, like, oh, hit me a 175 shot, type of thing, as opposed to like saying what club they should hit. And then, after a week or two, you kind of get a feel for what they can do, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like I said, it's some people, it clicks right away, and sometimes it takes a couple weeks, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. I've worked with guys that only lasted a couple weeks just because we didn't get, like, the personalities clashed, and it's not a negative against me or a negative against them.
Absolutely, right.
It's the way the world works,
So do you and Matt live close together?
No, he lives in Florida.
Perfect. So how,
as far as possible.
That's even better. Like, this will be even more fascinating then. So how will you two individually prepare for the season, and then how will you two, I mean, is it just like you show up for the first tournament and that's your first time really practicing together?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Matt and I worked one tournament in the past before, but we played golf together. Like, we're friends. Like, he's one of my better friends out there as far as players or caddies go, so it's going to be pretty easy with that one, with Matt, and then we're just going to show up to the Greenbrier next week and start working on Monday, and just
that was my next question. Where are you starting? So Greenbrier's first up.
Yeah, first up. We're going to go green. I think we're going to play the first 4, and then kind of see how we go. As far as if we're going to try to play, because the fall, when I first started caddying, the fall was only 3 or 4 events, and it didn't even count towards the FedEx Cup. And now it's, 10 events or 11 events, I guess, if you include the opposite field events. So he doesn't necessarily want to play every one, so I think we're just going to, right now we're planning on the first 3, maybe 4, and then going from there to see what we play after that.
Yeah, I mean, y'all don't have an off season at all anymore.
Not anymore.
I mean,
not anymore. I mean, you get December off, and you get, well, now I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think we have the last week, and we got from Thanksgiving until New Year's off, basically. Which in any other job, if you had 5.5 weeks off in a row, like, you'd be pretty stoked on it. But, with the amount of like traveling that we do, and I miss the longer off seasons. When I first started caddying on the PGA Tour, you got for the better part of like 2.5 months off.
Right.
Yeah, you could go play a couple events like in between. But if the player had a good season and they didn't have to play, back then the fall didn't count for the FedEx Cup. It was just to like the guys that finished out, that were outside of the 125 going into the playoffs, still had these 4 or 5 events to like earn the money to finish in the 125 and keep their job. So if you had a guy that had a good enough year, you wouldn't even play him. You might go play Disney just because they wanted to bring their family down.
Mm-hmm.
That was always a fun tournament down there. But yeah, it's definitely changed, and I'm not going to complain too much because it's a great opportunity to make a lot of money every week. There's a tournament, and great opportunity to have a lot of fun. But I think it may be a combination of me getting older too. It's just you look forward to the off season, even though it's a little bit shorter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's going to be this year. Depending on how much we play in the fall, there'll be a 5-week stretch that I don't have a tournament to go to, which will be nice.
Yes, it will be. How do you prepare for that? Go ahead.
I was going to say, luckily I live in Northern California, so it's not like the weather's ever bad.
I think you're going to make
some pretty nice days. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel bad for some of the guys that live in Ohio or something.
Hey, don't knock Ohio.
I love Ohio.
Yeah,
if your only time to spend weeks in a row is in December,
I know.
Cold.
You have to feel bad for like Jason Day, who's from Australia and then moves to Columbus, and it's got to be a pretty different Christmas for him.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so funny. So what is it like for you to travel to these events? What do you do? What do the days look like? I mean, I'm kind of under the impression that y'all are, like, as a caddy, if your player doesn't have to get there till 11, you may be there at 6 a.m. getting prepared and then be there all day.
Yeah, if we have work to do, luckily I've been doing it for enough years now, and unless there's a new course introduced, it's not quite as busy as it used to be.
Okay.
When I was first few years caddying, I would travel Sunday night every week and get there so I can spend all day Monday getting to know the golf course. And the other thing, like the yardage books we use have improved so much in the last 10 years. It's incredible. A guy named Mark Long makes them, who's a former caddy, and it's unbelievable how much information he can pack into that thing. And when I first started doing it, it was a little bit more of like, it was a drawing of the hole and the sprinkler head yardages, but it didn't have a lot of other yardages on it, like, well, how far is it to this bunker from the tee and all that kind of stuff. So we used to go chart the golf courses more or less. And then as the years went on, I don't need to do it as often. I still walk the courses on Monday, but a lot of the times, to be honest, it's more of like a social hour with other caddies. Like, we're out there doing work, if anything's changed, but it's just 4 buddies walking around, telling stories and even if you're not really paying attention, I think you're still kind of absorbing something of the golf course, just wandering around it, So it's gotten to it's not as much preparation as it was when my career first started. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, if we have an afternoon tee time on a tournament day, I'll go out there a few hours early and walk a couple holes just to see how the greens are bouncing, or anything I can pick up that will help us that afternoon playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, they're full days. A couple guys I've worked for didn't quite practice as hard, and not as a negative thing. They just didn't need to. They were playing well, and so you would be at the golf course for 6 hours, including your warm up and whatnot, which was great. But a lot of the times they're 8-hour days for the most part. As far as getting there, we're lucky enough that they provide us food at every tournament, breakfast, lunch, and stuff. So get there early, get a good meal in, and,
Yep.
you do your book work and then go start practicing, hour and a half before the tee time. So, yeah, they turn into long days a lot of times, which isn't bad. I mean, there's a lot of worse places to spend 8 hours, a beautiful golf course.
Right. You mentioned you'd be walking around scouting the course with a few of your buddies. Like, who are your friends on tour?
I got a good group of guys, actually. One of my really good buddies, Zach Williamson, he and I caddied. We actually went to college together, and we caddied at Pebble Beach together.
Oh, that's
and I
cool.
Stayed, yeah, it's really neat. And I stay with him a fair bit, and so I'll walk with him a lot. He is working for Doc Redman, who is a rookie on tour this upcoming season. He's going to be working with him. He also worked for Jonas Blixt for a while before I did.
Okay.
But yeah, he's been out there just about the same amount of time as I have. And then another guy, JJ Jakovac, who spent a lot of years with Ryan Moore and is now working for Colin Morikawa, who just won in Reno. He was one of the college kids that turned pro and then won a tournament.
That was nuts.
So yeah, and those two guys, I've known for a long time. JJ and I played college golf against each other, but we really got to know each other. That we both worked the nationwide tour at the time, with Korn Ferry now, the same year. So we got to know each other really well then. And then you obviously, I've been out there for long enough. I've got a lot of good friends out there, and I try not to stick too much to my own little clique of people I've known for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I like to get to know different people, and I bounce around people I stay with. If you stay with the same guy every week, eventually you're going to get tired of them, or they're going to get tired of you. One of the two, So I kind of get teased about it, because I'll stay with different guys a lot just to get to know them. And what's the point? You spending all these weeks with these guys, and you got to try to get to know them if you want to get to know them. And you learn things about different people from different places, and yeah, it's neat, I think.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of, even though we're all golf nerds, for the most part, outside of golf, we're all very different. We all have different views on life and philosophies, mm-hmm. and it's fun to pick another person's brain about, what makes them tick.
Yeah, for sure.
For lack of a better term, yeah.
Do you see a lot of caddies, when you're talking about when someone doesn't have one player that they're with for an entire season, do you see a lot of people bouncing around between the different tours, or does someone pretty much stay with the PGA Tour, but they might have a few weeks off if they don't have a player?
Yeah, I mean, you try your hardest to stay with the PGA Tour, just because it's where you want to be, Yeah. But there's plenty of guys that do bounce around. You got guys that might have a full-time job on the ladies tour, and they have a couple weeks off, and they'll come out, and we call it work in the parking lot, trying to pick up a random bag, be it a guy that Monday qualifies, or a guy who maybe just fired their caddy, or their caddy just quit. There's always an odd chance that you can pick up a random bag, and we call it work in the lot. And then there's other guys that kind of bounce around between players, and I was one of them last year. I think last season, I worked for 6 different players at points, which is great, because it means that at least I'm still getting jobs, I guess. But yeah, a lot of guys will bounce around, and then what a lot of guys have done also in the past, like a guy named Kirk, who's become a pretty good friend of mine. He works for Cameron Champ. He was working on the PGA Tour, and then Cameron Champ was playing on at the time, the Web Tour, the Korn Ferry Tour. And he went down to work for Cameron just because he knew how good he was. He knew he was going to graduate, So you go, it's not a demotion by any means. If the person's has a, maybe not for sure, but has a 90% chance they're going to graduate to the PGA Tour, guys will do that, and go work the second half of the year on the Web or Korn Ferry, and then come back up. But for the most part, everybody wants to be out here, And even my buddies that work on the ladies tour, they still they have, most of my buddies out there have been there for a long time, and they have really good jobs, but they still want to get out here. It's just the way it is. I mean, like I said earlier, it's the money I mean, it sucks
Right.
that money runs everything in this world, but it does. So, you gotta, the opportunity to work out here is hard to pass up, I guess.
Yeah.
The opportunity to stay out here is hard to pass up as well.
I mean, it's so interesting because you're talking about the money, and it's fascinating to me. I mean, I consider myself a pretty avid golf fan, and I feel like this is pretty embarrassing to say, but I did not realize that Phil Mickelson's sister was on the LPGA.
I don't know if she's playing right now. I think she might have played at points, but I think she's a teaching professional. I might be wrong.
No, and she might be, but when she just came out a couple weeks ago just saying like how big of a discrepancy there is in money on the tours. Yeah. And it's, I mean, you're seeing it so much in so many other sports, right? Soccer, that was the big thing all year with soccer, and you're hearing it more and more with golf. I mean, do you see it? I mean, is it a sponsorship issue? What do you think the issue is?
It's a sponsorship issue, unfortunately. It's just what does the average American want to sit on their couch and watch? I think that's like what you can boil it down to.
Yeah.
And I obviously know firsthand, having spent a couple of years out there, the women that play on the LPGA Tour are amazingly talented, and they're fun to watch. They play a different kind of game than the guys do. They're not smashing it 300 and something yards in the air and spinning wedges back, but they're so talented, and their precision is incredible, but it's unfortunately what's marketed in America, and like the only sport that I think it's relatively equal. And at one point I remember that the women actually made more money in tennis than the men did until the big four of men's tennis that are out now, Nadal and Federer and Djokovic and can't think of the other guy's name, but there was a period of time where the ladies tennis pros were making more money, and they showed it. It was more entertaining to watch. Like you can watch a rally of a 12 or 20 hit rally watching the women play tennis and watching the guys, they hit it so damn hard. Like half the guys didn't even return serves, So it was, honestly, as a sport fan, I'd much rather watch somebody that's going to have a longer rally and, run around and gets exciting than watching some guy hit a 140-mile-an-hour serve past another guy, But yeah, I think with golf, it's a sponsorship thing. It's who wants to watch it. Mm-hmm. And, I wish I had an answer for what, the LPGA could do to catch up, but it's a pretty substantial difference. It's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. Like it's kind of a sad state of the way that society is, like most people that play golf that are recreational golfers should be watching the women play as opposed to the men. I mean, their game, like watching the women's game, is going to help them a lot more than watching these guys. And these guys sitting on their couch watching golf aren't going to be able to hit it 320 yards in the air, but they can learn to hit it straight and learn to keep it in the right position and like shoot a better score just playing strategic golf, which the women do,
Absolutely.
They excel at too. So,
I mean, I find it so interesting because people are like, well, I can't watch it on TV. And I'm like, well, you can't watch it on TV because they're not putting it on TV. I mean, if you're up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you can watch LPGA all day long. You can watch more of the European Tour. I mean, it's just so hard to find golf. And I remember when I was like first talking about starting the podcast, and someone was like, "Oh, you're going to have all these people to talk to during their off season since it's not really going to kick up again until March or April." And I was like, "Oh no, there's still tournaments going on. They're just not showing them on TV because it's football season."
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's like the other thing with, I mean, I probably honestly watch more LPGA golf than I watch PGA golf because a lot of times I'm caddying in the PGA Tour event.
Yep.
But I follow the LPGA for my friends. And the one thing that I will say, like, and it's gotten better over the last couple of years, is a lot of the LPGA and a lot of the Korn Ferry events were always put on tape delay, so you lose the excitement of being in the now. You watch every PGA Tour event you watch is live. When that guy makes the putt to win, they just made that putt to win. Where with like the advances we have in technology and computers and smartphones and everything, if you can look up the score of the LPGA and you already know who won, and then you turn on the coverage and they're on the 6th hole,
yeah,
it's
so
you kind of you lose the excitement,
Yeah, it's like
So
watching your favorite football game or something. It's like turn all social media off and just pretend like nothing's happened and watch it, act like you're watching it live.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll do that, when I'm home and stuff. I still play a fair bit of golf and, do a lot of other stuff. And I'll tape, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, and I'll tape the Giant, or DVR, or whatever you call it, the Giants game. And I'll come home and, start it 2 hours late, but I will turn my phone off and put it in the other room, and just so I don't get any texts or, have I don't grab my phone to check something and see what the score actually is. But
yeah, absolutely.
in modern society, that's getting harder and harder to do, to be honest.
I can't tell you how many times we have watched, and I don't have notifications turned on my phone for anything anymore just because I get too distracted. But we'll be like watching the end of a tournament and it'll be a playoff or something crazy. And all of a sudden my husband's phone will go off and it'll be like, oh, Brooks won. Like, wait, what? No. Yeah. We haven't even seen him finish. Like, what are you talking about? Like, well, that was boring. Okay, moving on.
Right. Yeah, and I think before the advances with the phones and computers and everything, I think you could get away with tape delay, because this is, my dad always tells me that even the NBA finals used to be tape delayed. They would show the game. They'd play it at whatever time, and then they'd show it in prime time.
Wow,
that's
crazy.
You didn't know.
I can't even imagine.
The only thing you had was newspapers, and those don't come out until the morning. So
yeah, so you had plenty of time to wait for that.
We've just turned into such an immediate society where everything comes at us right away, and it's, which I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely affects a lot of sports,
Absolutely.
Where every sport tries to be live as much as they can,
Right, absolutely. I mean, that's why it's so easy to watch it through apps on your phone now. If the major channels aren't showing it, you don't have to miss anything.
Right.
So
even though it's unsafe, I know I've done it many times. I've watched the end of, if say we finish an hour before the leaders on a Sunday, and I'm driving to the next stop or the next airport. Yeah. You can turn on the PGA Tour app and watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope, a lot of times if somebody else is driving, I'll just watch it, as close as I can. But I'll even just listen to the audio sometimes. 'Cause a lot of times, you're friends with either the player or the caddy or of one of the few people that's in contention, so you got to tune in.
Yep, for sure. So who do you think are some of the big players or just interesting players to watch going into next week?
I got to say Matt Every, obviously. I think he's going to have a great week. But it's cool to watch those rookies, or even, some of them aren't technically rookies, but the guys that just come off of the Korn Ferry Tour, to see, some of the guys, some of the guys are ready to go and they want to attack and they want to prove to everybody how good they are. Mm-hmm. And then some guys are deer in the headlights, they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm on the PGA Tour now,
Yeah, there's a lot more people at these events.
Yeah, when I'm checking scores, come Thursday and Friday, I'll be looking for more along those people, see how those guys played and whatnot. I think that's always, it's like a little interesting study on sports psychology almost, to see how the guys react to the change in scenery, obviously my friends and guys that I've worked for I'll pay attention to, but
Absolutely.
I think for these first few events you pay attention to and I don't know how many actual rookies we have this year. It might be maybe around 30, because I know a lot of the guys that got their cards through the Korn Ferry finals, the last three events, I think of the 25 of them, 20 of them have played on the PGA Tour in the last 2 years, which is, I don't pay enough attention every year, but I think that's a pretty high number, And I know there was a handful of rookies in the regular season 25 that are going to be actual rookies, but I like to pay attention to them for the first few events.
For sure. So when someone loses their PGA Tour card, their options are to go to Korn Ferry. Are there any other options outside of obviously quitting, which I can't imagine a lot of people are doing, but what can they do?
Well, there are options. If you don't finish in the top 125 on the PGA Tour, if you finish 126 to 150, you still have conditional status for the next season, which used to mean you would get 15 or so events, but now just, I don't know what it is with the way the priority list works, but now that conditional card, you might get 8 or 10 starts, and that's nice to kind of to have in your back pocket. But those guys will still go; they'll be exempt into the Korn Ferry Finals,
okay,
and they'll try to get their card back through the Korn Ferry Finals. Anybody that finishes, I think it's anybody that finishes in between 126 and 200 get into the Korn Ferry Finals. So, but anybody from like 151 to 200. They're not going to have status on the PGA Tour the next year, so they are, obviously going to try to get it back through the finals, and if not, they'll have status on the Korn Ferry Tour the following year.
That's so interesting to me. I mean, you have all those guys that, I mean, have played in the big leagues, right? They've played the PGA, and then they go back down, or they go down to Korn Ferry if they hadn't been qualified through that, or they had done Q school in the past or whatever. Yeah. Do they just have a huge advantage over these other guys that have only been on Korn Ferry just because of their experience on the tour?
I think they should, but again, it's something that it's with the whole psychology of it. Like, some guys go down there and they're like, all right, this is my kick in the ass. I mean, pardon my language.
No,
but
absolutely.
This is my kick in the ass. I got to prove myself this year that I belong up there. And then some guys will pull the woe is me, oh, I don't belong down here. I should be up there. And then next thing you know, they get lapped by a bunch of 23-year-olds that are hungry, and want to get out there. So depends what kind of, if you use it as a motivating factor or if you use it as a demoralizing, factor, I guess.
That's so fascinating.
But yeah, I would think that, I mean, if it was me, I would hope that I'd be of the mindset like, all right, I'm going to prove myself. I don't belong here. You might walk around with a little bit more swagger than the kids that are, just getting their career started because you proved yourself. You have been up there, and whether or not you've won, but you've kept your card, whatever it may be. Like you've proven that you do belong up there. Now you got to prove it to yourself, I guess, that you belong out there. So
that's so interesting.
I think it's just a matter of how they accept it,
For sure. So I have to talk to you about something. This is not at all golf related, and I'm sure you'll know where I'm going with this, but there's some really interesting articles about this one. Do you know what I'm about to ask?
I'm pretty sure I do, yeah.
About a certain quarterback, absolutely. So this story is just madness. I'll let you tell it. I won't even spoil who it is or anything, because this is just so fascinating to me.
Well, I ended up going to high school and playing a little bit of high school football with Tom Brady, and it's funny because Tom and I played baseball against each other. We were the same age, obviously, and we went to our grammar schools played each other in sports. So from fifth grade on, I was playing Tom in baseball, basketball, and then none of us played. There was no Pop Warner or Little League football in the Bay Area growing up, so none of us played football until we got to high school, and our high school had a freshman team. So Tom and I both made the freshman team, and I wanted to be a quarterback, but I really didn't stand much of a chance with with Tom being there. But in fact, Tom, our freshman team, Tom wasn't even the starter on the freshman team. Oddly enough, there was another guy whose name was Kevin. I can't think of his last name. But yeah, so we all started playing football as freshmen, and obviously don't think about it in the moment. But there was a game where I think we were playing St. Francis, which is another. We went to Catholic schools, and we were getting beat pretty bad. So coach took Kevin out of the game and put Tom in at quarterback, and I was in as a receiver. And the first play that we ran with Tom at quarterback was a little 7-yard out pattern to me, and I caught it and stepped out of bounds and didn't think anything of it. The next play we ran an end around, which is where the receiver runs behind the quarterback and grabs the ball and tries to run down the other sideline. And I think I might have lost 20 yards on that play. At least the first one.
But your first one was so good.
Yeah, and I never even obviously Tom developed in high school. He was he was an all league. Become our junior and senior year, I stopped playing football, but you knew he was good and whatnot. And you knew he was going to play in college somewhere. And then he got drafted our senior year for Major League Baseball. And this is kind of showing our age a little bit, but he was drafted by the Montreal Expos, which isn't even a team anymore. But he had it in his mind. He wanted to be a quarterback. We grew up watching Joe Montana for the San Francisco 49ers. Mm-hmm. And he took a chance and he went to Michigan on I think it was a partial academic, partial football scholarship. And he didn't start. I think he started his junior year a little bit, and it was great to see, but we didn't think anything of it. He didn't think he never thought he was gonna beat Tom Brady.
Right.
At least I didn't. I don't know. He was always like, and one thing I will say about him, he was an incredibly smart guy. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Like, he was a big jock in high school, and he wasn't the stereotypical jock. Like, he was just a nice guy, you know, and did well in school, treated people nice, and you kind of see it in him as an adult that he's always been a pretty good dude, But then he got drafted by the Patriots, and it was like, wow, he got drafted. You didn't think anything would happen, I didn't think he'd last in the league, and then he gets the, just right place, right time, where the starting quarterback got injured for the Patriots, and he came in and they won the Super Bowl that year.
That's
it's
insane.
Incredible. Yeah, and then obviously his career progressed, and he's the greatest ever as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not just saying that because I grew up playing with the guy, but I think it's his numbers speak for himself. But I never realized that it was the first pass he ever threw, was the one that I caught, and I don't think he did either until I was the President's Cup was at Harding Park in San Francisco. I was caddying on tour at the time, but I wasn't caddying for anybody that was in the President's Cup. But Jim Mackay, Bones, Phil's old caddy, he and I became friends, and he got me tickets to go to the President's Cup. So I go to the President's Cup, and I'm wandering around watching it, having a good time, seeing people I know, obviously. And I keep getting this like missed call over and over again. And it was a sports reporter who was trying to get a hold of me. And eventually, as I'm leaving, I'm walking to my car, and I finally answer it for, I think it was like the fifth or sixth time he had called me. And he tells me, the guy who wrote that article, he tells me, like, I went through Sarah, I've been, following Tom's career and went through Sarah High School's, records. And I found out that you caught the first pass he ever threw, and that's that. That's, and I never thought anything of it. I would brag that I played high school football with Tom Brady, but until then,
right, but you didn't think like it really
early
meant
30s
anything.
at the time. I didn't think it meant, I told him I'd tell people I caught passes from him, but I didn't think anything of it until this guy tracked me down. And it was pretty, it's neat. It still is neat. It's pretty cool to have a connection to somebody that's, obviously I'm hanging around with the best golfers in the world and whatnot, but even, golfers idolize other athletes and, everything like that. So it's cool. Like it's funny. It comes up a lot, the caddies, friends of mine, and player friends of mine that know the story.
Yeah.
Always try to get me to tell it to the new people,
Like, we know this guy.
When Chris Kirk won Sea Island, Chris DeMarco was doing the commentary for the Golf Channel, and he came up to me during the round, and he's like, "Hey, can I tell that Tom Brady story on air?" And I said, "I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't. I want to get known as a decent caddy before I get known as the dude that caught Tom's pass."
Right? So, absolutely, and that's fair.
Yeah, and Chris was nice enough to not bring it up, and it's been great. So it's been out of the hasn't really come out in the golf media yet, but now that Bones is a commentator, the next time I get in a hunt and NBC is covering
it'll
it,
be out
he's
there.
Gonna bring it up. He's already threatened to bring it up many a time, so, which is fine. I've had a pretty good career, and I can handle it now. But at first I didn't want to get known. I just didn't want to be, he's a caddy on the PGA Tour, but
there's this asterisk
it's just
behind
a nice
your name.
side story now. Yeah.
I think it's really cool
it's
that
incredible. I see him.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's really cool that you continue to get to see him not just play football, but to be an advocate for golf. Like, he is such an avid player.
Yeah.
And that's got to be neat to see too.
AT&T. Yeah, in the AT&T every year at Pebble Beach, he plays whenever he can. But usually the AT&T is like a week after the Super Bowl, and Tom keeps going to Super Bowls, so a lot of times he doesn't have the energy to play golf the following week.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you caddied for him?
A few times, I've never caddied for him, but every time he's in the tournament, we hang out and talk for a little while.
That's awesome.
One year it was pretty funny. You know, a fair few guys knew the story, you know, my first couple of years, but then, you know, Tom's in the tournament one year and I'm talking to him on the practice putting green. We're catching up, you know, we talked for 15, 20 minutes or something like that. And I give him a hug, goodbye, and I'm going to go back to my player. I don't even remember who I was working for at the time. And I turn around, and there's like 20 PGA Tour players that are just staring at me like, how do you know Tom Brady? I'm like, oh, I went to high school with him. You know, it's funny. You know, it's a pretty funny thing. And I always try to make sure that people know it's like, it's nothing that I did that, like, I was just right place, right time. I went to the right school. I grew up in the right area. I don't know, like, I didn't deserve to be Tom Brady's first complete pass, but I just happened to be there, you know?
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
It's just such an interesting story. Was it by Sports Grid? Was that who had written the article?
I think so, yeah. I wish I can remember the guy's name that wrote it. Well, but I can't right now, yeah.
Let me see if I can find the article, because God love your dad. Did you see the update afterward?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So at the very bottom, it's let's see, Rick Chandler. Does that sound right?
Rick Chandler, that's right. It was Rick Chandler, and unfortunately, he just passed away. He was a really good friend of my dad's. Yeah, he just passed away about 2 weeks ago.
Oh goodness, well, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Rest his soul. Yeah.
It would make sense that he was friends with your dad, because there's an update at the bottom that says, Bill Harke Sr., the dad, emails me. Great story, but I have to dispute one fact. 7 yards, the completion was more like 5 at the most. So your dad's just like throwing shade at you in these online articles.
My dad was a sports writer. My dad, my whole childhood, my dad was a sports writer, you know, and it's kind of probably the reason why I remember telling him, and he reminds me of it. Like, I told him at some point that I'm going to be in sports. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to be in sports the rest of my life. And, you know, here we are, you know. And he was, you know, he's the greatest dad you can have when you're a sports geek. You know, he's covering the Giants and the A's and the 49ers and the Warriors, and dragging my brother and I to all these games. Like, we were at the earthquake game in '89 at Candlestick Park. And so, like, I always felt comfortable in that environment, and
absolutely,
like, the professional sports environment. And I think that's kind of how I ended up where I am, you know, or made it easier to end up here and feel comfortable, you know, not feel like a, you know, fish out of water.
For sure.
Just because I'm used to seeing, like, my dad took us to the, you know, the Warrior games, and this was back when the Warriors were awful. But we would go to the Warrior games and, like, go through the locker room and stuff. I mean, you know, as a kid, you see all these great athletes and whatnot, but then to have, like, that sense of, like, comfortability with it, you know, like, not being in awe too much. Like, you're in awe of their skills, but they're just dudes, you know, they're just humans. Yeah. They're not any different, you know. So.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I'd love to play a quick 9 if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. What is your most memorable win?
Sea Island, Georgia, with Chris Kirk, just because it was my first one.
Yeah. Who's the funniest caddy on tour?
Oh, man. He's not caddying anymore, but a really good friend of mine named Derek Mason. He could do anything, and he would make me laugh. He's awesome.
When did he get off the tour?
He stopped caddying 3 years ago now, I think.
Oh, okay.
He had a child and decided to stay home and help raise his kid, which is
That's
a very
awesome.
noble thing of him.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. What is your favorite tournament or course?
I'm biased to Pebble Beach, you know,
Yes.
just because that's home for me. But aside from Pebble Beach, and even before Chris Kirk won there, I always loved Sea Island, Georgia. I think it's just a great little town. It reminds me of Carmel, you know, so I think that's why I liked it so much.
Absolutely, yeah. Who would you want to play around with or caddy for?
I mean, Phil, probably, just because I'm a left-hander and I grew up, you know, idolizing him. And
So you're a left-hander. You play left-handed too?
Yeah, I play left-handed golf. Yeah, so I always kind of grew up idolizing him, and I've been lucky enough to be in his group on a few different occasions, and he's a great guy. He's just as good of a person as I made him out to be in my head as a kid.
Absolutely.
But I try not to idolize any of the guys just because I'm with them all the time. But I still it's still Phil.
Oh yeah.
And Tiger, of course.
Yes.
I would love to. I think I would just spend the whole time playing with Tiger, just thanking him for everything that he gave the rest of us.
Right, seriously, it's so true.
Thanks for the car I drive.
Right. I mean, it's bonkers to see what he does for the game. I was fortunate enough to be there on Sunday when he won at Augusta, and just to see the difference in the crowds that year versus the year before. I mean, it was madness. Oh, yeah. Absolute madness. Incredible. And which is all just great for the game.
Not to take up too much time on this question, but the greatest comparison is the first tournament that he ever won was in Las Vegas in 1996, and the first place check was $400,000. And now every single tournament we play is over $1 million, some are over $2 million. Mm-hmm. And that's not inflation, it's only 20 whatever years ago, so
yeah, that's just more money coming into the game.
Yeah, and the fact that he won Augusta again is just, I got to stay in good shape so I can continue to do this for a while, because it's just going to go up, especially with him, him winning both the Tour Championship and Augusta. It's just, he's the best thing that's ever happened to this game, hands down, I think. I wasn't around for Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah, but... we can just watch what they did, anything that was recorded, right? Yeah. What is your favorite place to travel?
I've kind of become a curmudgeon on traveling. I really like to travel to home. That's my favorite place to travel to is coming home. But as far as an event goes, I've been lucky enough to do the British Open, and I really like going there. I just like the culture over in Scotland and Ireland and England and stuff. It's in the way that the fans appreciate golf and the golf courses themselves. I really like that trip.
Were you there this year?
I was not there this year.
Okay.
No.
I just can only imagine what it must have been like for Shane to win, being Irish and in Ireland, and just my husband and I were supposed to be there and unfortunately didn't get the chance to go, and that was going to be the front of our trip, and then we were going to spend time in Ireland, and we're just can you imagine what just the whole country must be like right now?
I know, so much pride, having gotten to know Shane a little bit over the years too. It just couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He's great.
That's good. That's good.
I really wanted to go there. I've heard about that golf course for years. I have an uncle of mine that's in the golf business, and he always says that's one of his favorites. So I was hoping to get there, but it didn't work out. So
hey, you'll get back. Fun. You'll get back. If you were on vacation, would you prefer an ocean, lake, or a mountain?
Well, that's why they made Big Sur. You got mountains and an ocean right next to each other.
That's a great answer.
I lived in Big Sur for a long time. When I was living in the Monterey area, I lived down in Big Sur Coast, and it's my favorite place in the world, and I've been a lot of places now.
That's awesome.
And it still is my favorite. But yeah, ocean, I guess, if I had to choose.
And I think ocean and mountain combo is a very valid choice.
Yeah, yeah.
What is your favorite go-to snack on the course? Or does any tournament, have better food than another that you're yep, I can't wait to go back there?
Well, they've all Charlotte is hands down the best as far as the caddy dining area goes. They just go above and beyond, and it's incredible. And I can't thank the guys there enough every year, but because of them, every other tournament's kind of stepped up, and it's gotten to the point where it's hard to even pick out a bad one, nowadays. But as far as on-course snacks, for me, it's the brand RX bar.
Oh yeah.
Make a bunch of different flavors, and they're easy to carry around, and it's not like anything that has chocolate in it, it's going to melt and all that kind of stuff. Yep. So that's probably my go-to on course, I would say.
Awesome.
But it's more out of, just because it's easy to carry around,
right.
If I had it my way, I'd eat ice cream, but you can't do that, Caddy. So.
That would be a little challenging. How do you unwind after a day on the course?
I just try to get away from it. Like I try to get it out of my mind, whatever way I can, read a book or go, do something else that's not golf related. Mm-hmm. But good or bad, day on the golf course, I try to separate myself from it. I've had too many friends over the years that I've watched that as a caddy that take their rounds home with them, where if the guy plays well, they're in a great mood. If the guy plays poorly, they're in a pissed off mood the rest of the evening. And I don't see any point to that. So I just kind of, maybe it's watch TV, maybe it's take a nap, read a book, something like that. But just I try to get it out of my mind.
I think that's great because at that point there's nothing you can do about it.
No, it's over. It's already happened.
Right. Right. I mean, even with a great day and a win, I mean, you still have to go back and start all over the following Thursday.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
What is your favorite? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
From it. No, I was just going to say I just try to separate from it.
Yeah.
And not for not a negative reason. It's just I think that's healthy for your mind and body and soul or whatever you want to say.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, for sure. And then what is your favorite sport besides golf?
Baseball, by far. Yeah.
And the Giants, correct? Is that who you said?
And the Giants, yep. San Francisco Giants.
Awesome. Well, I was going to say, where can we find you to continue this conversation online? But we can't find you on social media, so we will just have to watch you on tour this year with Matt Every. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
Awesome. Well, best of luck in Greenbrier. We can't wait to watch you, and I thank you again, and I'm really looking forward to watching you too and what you can accomplish this year.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks for joining me this week. Let's continue the conversation online. You can find me at Golfish Podcast or at Miss Amy Goodman on Instagram. See you next week.